My childhood.
Hello, and welcome to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Kat.
I'm Mike.
And tonight, do you want to tell them what we're covering, Michael?
We're gonna be talking about Hey Arnold.
Yes.
The Nickelodeon classic.
I'm stoked to be covering this show.
Yeah, me too. I really actually wanted to go back to this for quite a while. There was a movie that came out a few months ago on Nickelodeon, and I wanted to go back and watch this back then, but it was during the holiday and didn't really have time, so I'm glad we're getting around to it now.
What do you remember about the show?
So I remember Helga. I think it's Helga, being like obsessed with Arnold.
Helga G. Pataki.
Yes, I remember having like a crazy grandpa, crazy grandma. I remember a couple of episodes. Like I vividly remember the Mauve Avenger, where they have like a like go-karts and they crash it and they like team up and they do like put them together. And one was called the Mauve something, and the other one was called the Avenger. So they just smashed the names. I remember there was one where they like took a dirty lot and turned it into a baseball field. And I remember the mailman sings in an episode, it's like, I hate the rain, I hate the snow, I hate the sleet, or something like that. But that's really, and I remember all the crazy characters. And the main thing I remember was, as a kid, I remember that this show said crap. Like there's an episode where like two bullies fight each other and Helga's like, they're going to beat the crap out of each other. And I was like, this show came out when I was in elementary school. So
Helga
I was like,
said crap a lot, right?
I don't know about it a lot, but I remember they said it once at least. And I was like, oh, I can't let mom and dad know.
Oh, snap. I remember loving the grandma character in the show. I especially enjoyed that she would always have bizarre costumes, and then anytime anyone opened the door to the boarding house, all those animals would come running out.
Didn't he have a pet pig?
I think there was a pet pig among several other creatures, and I remember thinking that Arnold had the coolest bedroom of all time.
Oh yeah? What? I don't remember his room.
Well, he was like a little bit of an inventor, I think, and so his room had all kinds of cool stuff, like his sofa folded out of the wall, and the ceiling was like all skylights. Like his bedroom was basically an atrium, and it was massive, and just did all kinds of cool stuff.
So we got some tweets this week.
We did.
And one of them actually did, or tweets, comments, DMs, and one of them talked about the room. I've got quite a few. I'll just read my favorites, but you want to pick one out first? All right, I'll just read a couple while you look for yours. So on Twitter, Kayla97Ann tweeted at us, I also remember really wanting Arnold's room, like the sunroof was killer.
Yeah.
So kind of in line with what you were talking about. This was a DM on Instagram from Matron Dia. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But it says football head and Angelica's gum shrine. I think she meant Helga.
Right.
Angelica's from Rugrats.
Yes. I do remember that gum shrine. Oh god,
right.
That was creepy but amazing. We should try and watch that episode. All right, I got a couple of things. BS and Craft Beer on Instagram said, he said, one thing I remember from the show and a joke I still say today is from Grandpa Phil. You know why I go fishing? For the halibut. I love a good pun.
I like a good pun as well.
I love a good pun too, BS and Craft Beer.
I got another DM from Sarah Jean Allen that says, Sid's nose looking like something else, ... And I'll never forget, Oscar, you keep the money. Oh, you know what? I do remember that character. He's got, because he lives in like a boarding house. There's a lot of weird tenants. The money? Yeah, and he's got this one kind of like low life guy who's married, and like I can picture the voice that was like, you keep the money.
He has that kind of whiny
voice.
And that's hilarious.
Do you have another one? Because I've got one more, but it's kind of long.
That's what she said. No, you go ahead.
Okay, so this one is a two-parter. So on Instagram, Landaverde000 just said his rationale. So I asked for him to kind of expand on his thoughts. So he says, While the show always portrayed distinct levels of morality depending on the character they focused on, you were presented with distinct perspectives and dilemmas. Arnold generally had a good sense of morality and allowed himself to analyze suggestions provided by Gerald or any of the other characters that may have questioned his moral compass. He never did act out of uncertainty, and if there was any, it was resolved through communication. The ability to remain calm, cool, collected was portrayed by the character and ultimately provided insight into a rationale or logic behind Arnold. The main purpose of the show is very morally driven to provide life lessons at every corner.
Oof, that's a lot.
That was well thought out.
That was well thought out. Yeah, I remember Arnold being very much a voice of reason.
He's a square.
A square?
I'm just kidding. L7 weenie.
But also being a little bit oblivious to some things. Kellyanne15 said, I remember Helga's obsession over football hat and her shrine dedicated to him. Promised myself I'd never get that hung up on a guy no matter what.
Good for you, girl.
No, I love Helga because I think as kids we've all had maybe not that level of obsession on a crush though, but I love how she was obsessed with Arnold and yet was also very adamant about outwardly hating him, which is something that I think a lot of people do, like well into the end of elementary school.
She's negging.
She's negging? What's that?
You don't know what negging is?
No.
It's when you I guess that's not negging, because normally negging would be like you give a compliment that's not really a compliment and you kind of like say something negative.
Oh.
So like they want your approval.
Like that makeup today is a lot better than your face usually is.
Exactly. Something like that where you're kind of giving them a compliment, but you're also kind of bashing them.
Oh.
So I think that's all the ones that I had.
All right.
I mean, there were a few more, but those are the notable ones that I wanted to read. Do you have anything else?
Nope.
I think we should just go watch it then.
I think so too.
Here we go.
All right, we are back and we watched 3 episodes, which actually kind of feels like 6 episodes because I completely forgot about this. But each episode is like 2 stories in one.
I forgot they did that, and now that I think about it, there were a bunch of shows that did that when we were kids. So Doug did that, and Rugrats did that, and I think
Really?
All Real Monsters did that too, I think.
What?
I even think Rocko's Modern Life. I think a lot of the shows did that because they probably figured kids can't like hold their attention span that long to do one long story, so they did a couple short ones, I guess.
That really explains why it seemed like Doug had so many more episodes than it actually
when
did.
it only had 2 seasons.
Right.
And this show, what's weird is this show was on for like 8 years, but it only had 5 seasons, but they probably just did a season like every year and a half or 2.
That's weird.
But yeah, I definitely remember, like, as we were watching the show, I started remembering a lot more like episodes and some of the jokes. Like in the very first episode that we watched, I was able to actually complete one of the jokes, and I haven't seen this show in easily 15 years, maybe pushing 20.
Well, and I feel like back in the day, there was so little content on that we watched a lot of reruns.
Yeah, you definitely did, and you would like it. Like, I wouldn't get mad about rewatching an episode.
Right. Like, I watched the same episodes of Rugrats maybe like 30 times.
Yeah, especially, and like you brought up Doug. Like, I remember watching Doug almost every single day, and then as an adult finding out that there was only 2 seasons.
That was mind-blowing.
Right. It really did blow my mind. I was like, there's no way that that's possible. And then you find out that there was a couple seasons. There was 2 seasons of like regular ones, and then Disney bought it and it changed, or ABC bought it, or whoever bought it.
Right. So the first episode we watched was the pilot, and one thing that struck me about this was I'd completely forgotten how young the voice actors sound. And I looked it up. Apparently this was the first animated show that Nickelodeon did that cast actual children to play children.
Oh, wow. I didn't know they did that. I figured they were adults.
Nope.
Huh. I definitely remember this episode. So this episode is one of the most famous ones where they Gerald and Arnold are, man, they all have like Harold, Gerald, Arnold, like all very similar names.
Arnold and Gerald are not similar names.
Arnold, Harold, and Gerald all end with the same syllable.
What?
Old.
Stupid.
Anyway, Arnold and
Old. That syllable, old. Oh.
I'm right.
Okay.
Anyway, Gerald and Arnold are playing fruits in Helga's like 4-food group play, and then she like yells at them, so they decide that they're gonna get off on like one stop too late on the bus, so they're a little bit late just to kind of bug her. But then they end up riding it all the way to the end, and then they get lost in downtown, and somebody like throws money at them. And this is the joke I remember, and I'm like, I see the guy throwing the money, and I'm like, people downtown sure are friendly. And then like they throw the money and they said
Right.
it, so I was really impressed that I remembered that joke, because I didn't really remember a lot of this show, but as we watched it, a lot came back.
God, this was such a solid episode for being a pilot.
Right.
Solid. I do remember the animation being a little bit different. It was a little more Ren and Stimpy-esque in the pilot than in the rest of the series. One thing I didn't realize was that Arnold was claymation before it was this series. So I looked it up, and Craig Bartlett, the creator of the show, he's also a writer for a ton of other stuff. He first released a short claymation at a film festival in 1988. So Arnold is as old as us.
Yeah. And then they aired some of these little shorts on Sesame Street.
Oh.
Yeah. And I vaguely remember seeing these on Nickelodeon as well. Like, I vaguely remember, like, it seems familiar. So after we watched a couple episodes, we actually went and watched a couple of the claymation things. They're weird.
Arnold Escapes Church, it's hilarious
it's
because
weird.
like watching it is exactly like my experience sitting there in church
As a child.
zoning out. No, it's trippy. You guys should watch it. It's on YouTube.
What's also interesting is I looked this up after we watched that little short, and it said like produced by Lisa Groening.
Right.
And I looked it up, and he is that is Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, Futurama, his sister. So Craig Bartlett is brother-in-law to Matt Groening. So that's pretty impressive.
Ostensibly the namesake
Yes.
for Lisa.
Yep. Absolutely right.
I am proud of myself for knowing that because I have not watched a single episode of The Simpsons in my entire life.
I find that very hard to believe.
I have not.
Huh.
I have not watched an entire episode of The Simpsons.
Whoop.
And now I'm just way
What
too
does it
far.
all mean?
I'm way too far behind to ever catch up. So
Oh, I mean,
it's dead to me.
I watched The Simpsons for years, and I'm way behind. Like, I haven't watched it in like 10 years, so well, longer than that. But getting back to Hey Arnold,
It was such a good episode, the pilot.
it was fun. I immediately was like in it.
Right. I don't know if you can relate to this. I remember as a kid, on more than one occasion, riding the bus to the end of the line on accident.
I've only been on a public bus like one time.
Of course, you know, growing up in Gilroy, California, garlic capital of the world, it wasn't really that big of a deal to ride it to the end of the line because you just end up like 6 blocks away from home, no matter where in Gilroy you live. But yeah, I definitely did this on more than one occasion, mostly because I refused to ever take the map of the bus routes with me. And then I'd forget which bus I needed to take, and then I'd take the wrong one, like going the opposite direction of where I needed to go. Yeah, if I lived in a
ding-dong.
big city, I would be dead.
Oh man. The other thing I liked about this episode was this, at least this first half, was towards the end they realize what's going on, and they feel bad about abandoning the group, and the whole time Arnold's like feels conflicted about not going, and then they get lost. Like they legitimately get lost. But the whole time he's like, you know, I'm all for being mean to Helga, but we're kind of letting everybody else down, and that's not cool.
Hey, Helga was under a lot of pressure. First of all, why was she in charge of the play?
You're right.
Didn't she have, like, a stage manager to help her out? Was she the stage manager and director and writer? Like,
And
where are
normally
the adults
elementary
in this?
school students aren't producing plays. But I did like at the end when they're getting chased by the bad guys, and then they realize what they need to do. So they go get their clothes back, the banana and the strawberry costume, and they throw the money at a family who has they broken down on the side of the road. And then the family's like, oh, people downtown sure are nice.
I feel like you should have distributed that money a little more widely.
Nah, that was fair. That was fun.
It was fair. There was an armored car recently that
That's right.
apparently the back doors just like swung open and bags of money fell out on the freeway. And so a bunch of people like were running around the freeway grabbing all this loose money. And the next day the cops were like, you need to return that money. Like,
Nope.
really?
But yeah, overall it was a fun episode.
It was.
And that was only half of it.
What was the second half of that?
The second half was I accidentally.
Oh, wait. So after they get the money, they decide to get some more clothes. So they decide to buy some clothes, and I love that they get beatnik clothes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And it's like, I always forget that beatniks were a thing, but they were all over the place in the 90s.
Right.
Like, whatever happened to the beatniks? Did they become hipsters?
I have no idea, but yeah, you're right. A lot of 90s stuff had it, like Boy Meets World. I'm pretty sure had a beatnik episode, and
Doug
then,
had beatniks.
and then his sister was a beatnik, and then the Goofy movie, or the Extremely Goofy movie, had like a beatnik scene as well.
Right.
But yeah, it was a fun episode.
It was good.
And then the second half was Eugene's bike, and I actually had a lot of fun on that episode.
Oh, poor Eugene.
This one's really easy to summarize. Basically, in a nutshell, Eugene gets a new bike. Arnold inadvertently destroys the bike, and then he rebuilds it, but forgets to put the brakes on, so Eugene ends up in the hospital. And then he gets his spleen and tonsils removed through a series of mistakes, so Arnold decides to make it up to him, and, like, have a fun day, and, like, they go to the baseball game, they go to the park, and they go on the ferry, and they go to the amusement park, and everything goes wrong. Like, he ends up with more broken limbs, and ends up getting, like, food poisoning, And what I loved about this episode, there was a point where Gerald's like, don't feel bad. He's a geeky kid, and this stuff happens to geeky kids.
It's so true, though. It does.
And what I loved about it was the whole episode was, Arnold trying to make up for the whole bike thing, and then everything was going wrong. But there's a flashback scene, and you find out that since they were, like, toddlers and diapers still, Arnold has been inadvertently hurting Eugene.
What was the next episode after that?
The next episode that we watched was also from season 1. It was episode 3, I think. Yeah, it was Helga's Makeover and Stoop Kid.
I love Stoop Kid. I remember Stoop Kid.
Yeah, the Helga's Makeover one wasn't all that great. Like, basically, in a nutshell, Helga steals Arnold's hat for her shrine. And
the shrine is so good.
Creepy, so it's made out of
gum. The shrine is just as good as I remember it.
Oh, the shrine is nasty, and it has flies. I forgot that there are flies flying around it. So she steals Arnold's hat, and then Arnold feels weird because he never takes off his hat. In fact, there's like a montage of him getting ready, and he's like in the shower with his hat, and then he blows dries his hat.
I remember that. I love how he like gets out of the shower, and then his hair just puffs back up again.
Right, he just like grabs it and pulls it up, and then it stays. And so Helga, like the first half of the episode is Helga stealing the hat because she realizes her shrine isn't complete. And then the second half of the episode is her mom throws it away because it's disgusting. And then so she spends the rest of the episode trying to get Arnold his hat back because he's depressed.
So good.
Yeah. I wouldn't say there's anything super memorable about the episode, but it was just a little filler episode. But I really like Stoop Kid.
Yeah, Stoop Kid was like solid.
Yeah, what was Stoop Kid about?
It was about this kid who's always on his stoop. And he's kind of like a legend of the neighborhood because he's just always there. He's an institution, I guess you could say, the Stoop Kid. And they're playing ball and they accidentally throw the football on his stoop. And he's infamous for basically like attacking people if they go on his stoop.
And then what's great is Arnold spends like 24 hours straight trying to see if the kid ever leaves so he can get the ball back. And the kid never leaves. Like, he's got a hammock set up and he's got a chair, presumably a bucket to go to the bathroom.
He does a stoop stakeout.
And then so what ends up happening is he realizes this kid doesn't leave. And so Gerald's like, what are you going to do? And he's like, I'm just going to go up there and take the ball. If he doesn't leave the stoop, I'm probably safe. And Arnold's right. Like, he goes up there and inadvertently kind of ruins Stoop Kid's life because he's afraid to leave the stoop.
And then everyone's ridiculing him.
And making fun of him and
Their
going
headlines.
up on the stoop. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was front page news.
Newspaper.
It was front page news.
Stoop Kid afraid to leave stoop.
And they're like, there's like chanting like, Stoop Kid's afraid to leave the stoop. Stoop Kid's afraid to leave the stoop. And then Arnold spends most of the episode trying to like teach him like it's okay to leave, and he shows them pictures of like pyramids and all these different like landmarks that look like stairs. And eventually he does leave. Stoops.
See, there's a big difference in cities between stairs and a stoop.
Can you explain the difference to me?
A stoop is like an extension of your living space. Like, there are people who spend all summer on the stoop. There are retirees who spend all day, every day on the stoop.
Drinking iced tea.
It's like neighborhood surveillance. It's the only way you interact with people. You go out and sit on the stoop. It's like you're inviting the
That's
interaction.
Like an inner city porch.
Pretty much.
Got it.
The stoop.
So
Get
ultimately,
off my stoop.
Ultimately, Arnold convinces him to leave the stoop, and Arnold's like, "Oh, you're going to explore the city." He's like, "No, I know that I can like heckle kids from the stoop and off the stoop." And then he chases Harold, the chubby kid, because he goes and makes fun of him. It was a solid episode overall. Like, it was really fun, and like it was another episode showing that Arnold really cares about the people around him.
Yeah.
Like, even when they're mean, even if they're weird and strange, like he's just a good guy.
Arnold's good people.
He's a good dude. He's a great guy. And then the last episode we watched, we just kind of randomly picked one. It was season 5, episode 7. It was Helga's Locket and Sid and Germs.
Sid and Germs.
I really liked the Sid and Germs episode.
They were both really funny episodes. I felt so bad for Helga.
Yeah, so you want to summarize that one?
No.
Jesus. So Helga's Locket, basically in a nutshell, she goes and pays to get her locket that has a picture of Arnold, which she always is constantly like doing an inner monologue to. I guess it's not an inner monologue because she
Arnold.
speaks directly. Oh, Arnold. She's very Shakespearean when she talks to her locket.
Yeah.
So she gets it engraved with like a love poem to Arnold, but she accidentally loses it, and Arnold's grandmother ends up with it, and then she leaves it out, and Grandpa thinks that it's an anniversary present to him, and Arnold's like, it's kind of weird. It's got a picture of me in it. And he goes, no, it's the greatest present ever. You're my favorite grandson, and I love it. And then the whole episode, Arnold's like embarrassed by it. So he's trying to
deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah, he's trying to convince his grandpa to put a picture of his grandma on it. And then the entire episode, they're also trying to open it, and Helga's constantly trying to get it back. And she has like a magnet. At one point, she almost chokes the grandpa out with a magnet. She uses a magnet on a fishing line and starts strangling the grandpa. And then she uses disguises and pretends to be an antique dealer.
She like straight up breaks into their house in the middle of the night.
Yeah, she does.
Like in his bed.
Yeah.
Helga's straight crazy.
She is.
I mean, everyone in this show is pretty crazy. Like, they go down to the basement, and the grandpa's using all his tools trying to get the locket open, and he opens up this trunk, and it's just full of heads.
Full of heads,
like
yeah.
mannequin heads.
The other thing that I noticed, and I remember seeing this in like a meme a couple months back, where it was like dirty things you see from your childhood, and it's like a lot of them were toys that looked like they had penises and stuff, but Grandpa totally has a penis hidden in his face.
There are several penis faces in this
Sid's
show.
nose, as our one of our fans pointed out.
Yes.
But yeah, this episode was really weird, but it was really fun. So are we done with this one? You want to move on to the last half of the last episode?
I like how once Arnold convinces the grandpa that he should replace the picture of him with the picture of the grandma, he's like, oh, her or Hedy Lamarr, or a roast beef sandwich, or Hedy Lamarr eating a roast beef sandwich.
And he's also like, we'll try it for a day and see how it goes.
Right? It's so funny.
So the last episode, or I guess half of the episode that we watched, was the Sid and Germs. And what's interesting about this episode is almost every cartoon has done this. Like Family Guy's done it, where there's an episode where like Stewie's afraid of germs. I'm sure South Park did it. I feel like The Simpsons had an episode of this. I know Rugrats did it. But a lot of TV shows have episodes where there's a character who's all of a sudden like obsessed with being clean and away from germs. And the show did it, but it was still really funny because it did it a little bit differently, because Sid is obsessed with catching frogs. And frogs are really germs, and he's like catching them in his mouth and like kissing frogs and stuff like that. And then he goes to being like a complete germaphobe with like a scuba suit that he's going around in school. And then he reverts back to it pretty quickly. And there's a frog catching competition.
I can definitely relate to this. More than once in my life, I have gone through especially germophobic phases. I think the first time, like, I don't ever remember not understanding what germs were. I think my parents disturbed me from an early age, so maybe I got over it the first time around very quickly. But then my dad explained to me how smell works, that your sense of smell is particulate based. So every time you smell something nasty, it's
like if you walk into the bathroom after someone pooped,
it's
you're
because
getting little poop particles
microscopic
in your nose.
pieces of whatever you're smelling is like in your face. So that was a problem. That was a big problem for like a few months, where I found myself like anytime I'd smell something bad, I would straight up hold my breath until I almost passed out. And then when I got to college, this is pretty bad. I spent like the better part of a year waiting for other people to go through doorways before I would, so I wouldn't have to touch the doorknob.
Yeah, I would do the same thing in the restroom, but that's just because people don't wash their hands. But I'm not like a super germaphobe at all.
Not at all.
I'll eat food off the floor in my own house.
Oh, God. Gross.
But this episode was so weird, like a frog catching competition, and like it was very reminiscent of like the Simpsons episode where they like go snake bashing.
What's snake bashing?
Where they literally like, kill snakes.
Oh.
Because like they get
Don't
run
they do
over.
that in Florida?
No, that was Ireland. That's what St. Patrick's Day
God.
is.
Stupid. Aren't you part Irish?
I'm mostly Irish.
Yeah. No, I know, like, there are certain, like, I think it's like ball pythons or something in the Everglades that are destroying Burmese. Are they Burmese? Some kind of python, because people are not responsible pet owners.
They eat alligators, and then the alligators rip their way through them.
What the
That's true.
You're full of it.
No, it's totally true. So there is an epidemic in the Everglades right now, and they're actually making their way up. I think like they're actually starting to see these pythons up in like Maryland and stuff. Like they're going way up there. They're invasive species. Like in certain parts of Florida, they'll pay you to kill them because there's so many of these things. Because the snakes reproduce quickly.
Our pet snakes growing up were always native. Like which is probably like ethically questionable now that I think about it. But when we were in Texas, we had a Texas brown snake, and then in California we had a gopher snake that was unusually tame, and we had Summer for 13 years. And then one day
she got out.
We never figured it out. They just like disappeared.
Yep.
Just
gone.
You know, like a 6-foot snake.
Gone. Never saw it again.
Didn't leave a note. Ungrateful jerk.
Right?
Not that I'm bitter.
What were we talking about? We completely got it. How did we get to the snake? Oh, because the Simpsons bashing the snake.
I still do occasionally have dreams that we find Summer somewhere in the house.
Well, probably not going to happen. We haven't been in that house in years because it got sold.
It's out there eating gophers.
Hopefully.
Living it up.
Living it up in Gilroy.
G-Town.
G-Town.
G-Roy.
So overall, like, what did you think about this show?
I love it. I think because we just finished up watching Frasier again, because we always have to have our happy, feel-good before bed show. I think Hey Arnold is going to take that place.
Well, we're watching Arrested Development, and then the new season's coming out. But then I think after that we'll watch this.
Right.
But overall, like, every episode you would see a different side character, and then I started remembering like side character like subplots. Like there's an episode where like there's Stinky, who was in the Sid and the Germ episode, like he was part of the frog catching team. And like I know there's an episode where I think Arnold saves his life, so he acts like a slave to Arnold to like make up for it. And I just remember like there's an episode where Gerald moves out of the house, like out of his parents' house, and then lives in the boarding house with Arnold.
They do a lot of character development, and not just for the main characters. Like, well, I mean, it's kind of an ensemble format when
it's
you think
almost
about it.
always a different character, and then Arnold reacting to that different character's growth and arc. Like, he's
Right.
consistently in it, but it's always like, it seems like every episode has at least one half of the story, or I guess half episode is based off somebody else.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty interesting. But the more we watched it, we only watched 3 episodes. I just started, like, all these little synapses of my brain started, like, reconnecting.
Right.
And I started just remembering episodes like Arnold has a crush on this girl. I think her name was, like, Lola or Lila. And then, like, her picture pops up on, like, a random episode. But yeah, I definitely remember a lot more of this. Like, I felt like going into it, I couldn't really remember much about it. And now I'm like, I just want to keep watching. Like, we didn't watch the Mauve Avenger episode, but I really want to watch that one.
This is a legitimately good show. Like, I feel like a family could sit down and watch this and everyone would enjoy it, because there's so much stuff written into it that I didn't realize was there as a kid, because it's written for adults too.
Yeah, it's solid. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's written for adults.
No, there are jokes in there that are written for adults.
There are a few, like, innuendo jokes in there.
So there are jokes in there for everyone, and even though it feels lighthearted the entire time, there are, moral quandaries that they have to wrestle with, and there are good life lessons in there. So I think it's got some really good value to it. It's not just fluff, and it's not shallow comedy. It's not gross comedy, which I hate personally. I could never stand that. And honestly, like, I feel like this show doesn't get enough credit for how good it was.
I agree to an extent. Like, I definitely remembered this show, but not as much as I should have, really. But, like, they did just have a movie for it, 15 years after the show ended.
Right.
So I think that's pretty impressive that they did bring it back for something.
I just feel like comparing this show to, like, the staples like Rugrats and Doug, they got so much more film stuff. And then, like, Doug ended up getting picked up by Disney after the fact. So I feel like those shows got a lot more opportunity to wrap up what they were doing with the show. The Arnold movie, the first one that came out, was at like
2004, I think.
Somewhere around there. There were 3 episodes that were supposed to wrap up the entire series, and that ended up becoming the movie.
Right. Oh, is that what happened on that?
Yeah.
Like, I remember seeing the movie, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. Doug had a movie too. You're right, though. Like, Doug had a lot more going on. Like, it had a movie as well, but I think Doug only had 2 seasons. So that's why it kind of, I don't know, it seems weird. Like, I definitely remember Doug more than this, but the show was solid, and it was on a lot longer than Doug was.
Yeah. And
then Rugrats, like, it had a bunch of seasons, but there would be like 2 years without new episodes. So Rugrats was a little weird, but it had like 3 like theatrical movies.
Right. Well, and there was a lot more. It sounds strange, but there was a lot more depth to the vocal performance on this show. I think something is just lost in translation when you have adults play children's voices, which most cartoons do, because you don't know how long they're going to run. And, adults' voices are more predictable, so you have grown women playing young boys. Instead, on this show, well, they had a different actor for the pilot, and then I think they had 4 more actors who played Arnold throughout the run of the entire series.
You know what also impressed me? So Dan Castellaneta, I think that's how you say his name. He plays Homer Simpson in The Simpsons. He plays the grandpa. And normally I can pick his voice out anywhere, and like, once I realized it was him, like I saw it on IMDb, I realized it was him, but he actually did something drastically different with his voice in this series as grandpa.
Right.
So, like, it's obvious him when you realize it's him, but until I actually looked it up, like, I didn't realize it was him, so that actually impressed me.
Yeah. No, there's just so much enjoyable, good stuff in this show, and I feel like the more we watch it, like, you could watch an episode several times and still see new things each time.
I'm left wanting more. Like, you mentioned at the top of the episode that you really, like, connected with the grandma character,
right.
But she was only in one episode that we watched, and very, very briefly, and I do remember her being crazy.
She had the best laugh.
Yeah, and then I remember, like, all the side characters, like, we didn't see anything with Oscar or any of the real tenants in the building.
Right.
And I definitely want to go, like, there's also, like, a character who runs, like, a bulldozer, and we didn't see anything with him. There's a butcher character, and we didn't watch didn't see any of them, so I really want to go back and watch more, because we really didn't see, like, half the characters.
Yeah.
And really, none of the episodes we had watched, surprisingly, were very Arnold focused.
That's true.
So
But the more I think about it, the more I think the show kind of like turned into a bit more of an ensemble format than we were expecting it to be.
I agree, because I can't really, like, now that I'm remembering more and more, just watching the little bit that we did, I can't really remember any standout Arnold episodes, but all the standout stuff that I remember were the side characters, or like his neighbors and stuff like that.
Fun fact. Before this series premiered, an episode of it was shown before Harriet the Spy. Remember that?
I do remember that.
I loved Harriet the Spy. All right, so I think that kind of covers it for me. How about you?
I think I'm good. I think we need to do the official closing, though. Is your childhood ruined?
Definitely not.
Yeah, mine either.
If anything, I feel like I was living a lie because I did not realize how magnificent this animated series was.
No, it's really good. I want to watch more for sure. Like we've said, we're going to
yeah.
watch more of a lot of the other stuff we've covered.
We're definitely going to
And
watch
we
this.
haven't, but I definitely, like, we signed up for Hulu for this, and we're going to get our money's worth out of it.
Yeah. What are we going to be watching for our next episode?
So first off, we're going to want you guys to respond to Twitter, Instagram, DMs, comments, whatever you guys want to do. Get to us on social media and tell us what you remember about the Flintstones movie.
Get at us.
Get at us. The live action one starring John Goodman and Rick Moranis. Yeah, we're really excited to watch that. So this week, a lot of you guys responded. We got like 10 people at least responding to us. So thank you guys.
Love it.
We loved reading it, and it actually made me think about stuff quite a bit. Like, I can't remember his name. I know who he is. His name is Antonio, but I can't remember what he put his screen name as. It really made me look at the episodes from a different point of view. So thank you to our listeners who actually responded, made us look for different things in Hey Arnold. And we're hoping we can do that again with the Flintstones. So tell us what you remember about the Flintstones movie. And Katrina, where can they find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinaosity. Check me out on YouTube.
And then you can check out everything that's MDXpods at MDXpods.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at MDXpods. We're on that Vero app. Don't worry about it. And of course, go to patreon.com/MDXpods if you want to chip in $1 or $2 and support the show. And go to Audible. Audible's always our sponsor. Go to audibletrial.com/MDXpods and you can get a free 30-day trial and a free book. And of course, listen to our other podcast, Remake Rewind. And that's it.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.